I really enjoyed making things, but I was getting very tired of making other people's ideas. And I was getting very cynical about the world of advertising. So a lot of the work we were doing was making TV commercials to try and sell products that I didn't particularly like very much. So age 29, I applied to the Royal College of Art to do a course called Design Products. Ron Arad, the architect and designer, had just taken over the professorship of that course. I was offered a place and started there, and that introduced me to, I guess, the kind of work that we still do to this day, of sort of critical design, using design to question technology, building lots of interesting products that would do that rather than using the written word, using objects and designed artifacts to change the way we think about things, to encourage us to think differently about technology and technological products.
You have a device where the signal comes in, but then that broadcasts using low frequency into the mouth and is translated into vibration into the inner ear, and it's perceived as sound, streaming sound.
The possibilities are endless. Prime ministers could receive secret guidance from their special advisors. Football coaches could pass tactical instructions to their players, and no one would ever know.
Imagine the guy on the stock market, if he's in the theatre, if he's in the cinema, if he's sleeping in bed, if he's on the beach. The stock rumours, information about companies collapsing and so on can reach him immediately and he can react to it.
I started thinking about Mo's project of energy independence, and I started looking at the Madeiran landscape. You can't see it too much through the way the lens is pointing, but where I'm looking I can see these huge cliffsides. Madeira is extremely vertical. So I started wondering what would Mo's project be in Madeira, and very quickly came up with this idea of the gravity battery. So essentially, in a nutshell, the gravity battery is a device that works as a storage medium. So you still use your solar panels or wind turbines, any renewable energy generation technique, but that energy is generated, if it's sunshine, often when people are at work or away from home when they don't need the power. The only solution to that right now is to sell it back to the grid, so that's the owners of the infrastructure. And year on year on year, they've been reducing the price that they buy back for, making it unviable. With the gravity battery, what we allow people to do is use that solar energy to lift a mass into the air. And with a lot of the cliffside Madeiran communities, that can be anything from 10, 14, all the way through to 500 meters of verticality. So the more height you have, the more time you have to drop the mass and the more energy you can essentially store. So you lift the mass during the daytime, and then when you need the energy, you come home from work, it's dark, there's no sunshine anymore, you can release the mass, it falls through space via a gearbox, turning a generator to generate electricity. It's all open source, so we're removing the role of big corporations, of large manufacturing plants. We're making it quite easy to build, so the current version is using a motorcycle engine that we found in a local breaker's yard. It's very cheap, so we're appropriating the motorcycle gearbox because they're very accurate and already made. And then we just play around with the gearing and play around with the mass, play around with the drop speed, and we can adapt it to many different domestic products.
Wow. Of my hen house, you dirty old Mexican hound. Now if he don't stop eating my eggs up, though I'm not a real bad guy, I'm going to get my rifle and send him to that great...
À Nîmes, on utilise le terme d'habitabilité du monde. On dit que le design peut se donner pour tâche de maintenir ou d'augmenter l'habitabilité du monde pour les habitants et les habitantes du monde. Donc il faut comprendre le mot habiter à plusieurs niveaux. Évidemment, le premier niveau, c'est le niveau matériel. Donc ça veut dire habiter dans une habitation, à l'abri des aléas climatiques, bon, etc. Je n'insiste pas là-dessus. Ensuite, il y a l'habitabilité du point de vue vital. Il faut qu'on puisse rester en bonne santé, donc c'est un peu l'habitabilité de son corps organique et biologique. Ensuite, on parle de l'habitabilité psychosociale. Donc là, il faut habiter avec d'autres habitants et d'autres habitantes. Donc là aussi, ce n'est pas toujours évident. Et enfin, il y a une dernière habitabilité que j'appelle parfois spirituelle ou culturelle, qui est habitée vraiment en être humain et non pas en animal, et qui est le propre donc de l'être humain, de pouvoir créer un monde culturel dans lequel il ferait bon vivre et se développer et s'épanouir. Donc c'est dans ce sens-là qu'on comprend l'habitabilité.
Je m'appelle Laura Pandel, je suis designer au sein d'une association qui s'appelle la 27e Région, qui se définit comme un laboratoire de recherche-action sur les politiques publiques françaises. Par politique publique, on entend tous les artifices et tous les services et tous les dispositifs qui sont proposés par la puissance publique, donc l'État et les territoires, pour faciliter en fait la vie d'un citoyen français en tant que citoyen, quoi. Voilà. Donc ça, c'est un programme qu'on a depuis le début de la création de l'association, qui vise en fait à faire tout simplement des permanences. On part en immersion dans un équipement public, donc ça peut être un lycée, une gare, un hôpital. Et en fait, on habite sur place, donc une petite équipe composée de sociologues, d'architectes, de designers, parfois de plasticiens. On habite sur place et on essaye de comprendre qu'est-ce qui ne fonctionne pas dans ce service public. Où est-ce que ça coince ? Est-ce qu'il y a des situations d'agressivité ou de violence dans les lieux d'accueil ? Est-ce qu'il y a des gens qui sont stressés ou qui sont mécontents de... voilà. Est-ce qu'il y a des tensions entre les professionnels ? Est-ce qu'il y a un manque de compréhension, un manque de signalétique ? Il faut habiter sur place et rencontrer des gens, passer du temps avec les gens, questionner tous les acteurs locaux. Et ensuite, une fois qu'on a fait ce diagnostic par l'expérience, en fait, et voilà, et questionner justement l'expertise des usagers, non pas l'expertise des décideurs, on peut agir et on peut proposer et tester des solutions en étant sur place.
This table started with a detail. I discovered a small metal part in the courtyard of my grandparents, and that metal part was turned to give more stability to a specific function. So normally you have a metal, or if you have a metal part that is just straight like that, it brings no stability in this direction. Right? Yeah. Because it's like a paper, a sheet of paper, which is like that, but a lot of stability in this direction. So, and if you turn it, it brings 3-dimensional, it becomes more stable. Yeah.
Works at Work is a magazine, and my background is design, and I noticed that I don't read many design magazines for various reasons. And I think the biggest reason is that they often stay in a bubble. They're written by designers, for designers, and they exclude a larger public. You can really see that the more specialized magazine becomes, the more elitist or excluding other public. And designers think that their work is relevant to a wider audience. Designers believe that their work can change the world. They believe that that their work applies to all levels of society and different walks of life. But in practice, discussion about design remains very isolated. So I wanted to see if there was a possibility to create a publication which was about design, but not for designers. That talks about the virtues, that talks about the purpose, that talks about more ideas than appearances. I have to say that the magazine succeeded for me because my brother reads it and he finds it relevant. He finds it that it doesn't contain jargon. It doesn't talk about how things look like, but it talks about very simple, basic things, how you can improve quality of life in different places. And they're very practical things like how you can solve traffic situations without bringing traffic signs, really basic things, how globalization happened because of simple improvement of logistics. When we started Works at Work, it was clear that we wanted to find the most direct way to get to the readers, to cut anything which is in between. And also the magazine would be funded by readers, not by someone else. There are no external sources of funding.
Works That Work wants to examine often ignored areas of design. In the spirit of this aim, we also intend to bypass traditional distribution networks, which typically take the largest part of the cover price, as well as control where the publication will be sold and at what price. Instead, we would like to deepen our relationships with our readers and make them partners in this enterprise. We call this social distribution.
So we have so-called readers' clubs where people would just get a stack of magazines for their friends, and in return we can give them the magazine for the price which is normally for distributors. So they get it for half price. So it's a win-win situation. We create the most direct connection with the readers. They get rewarded for because we bypass all the distribution chain.
Designer's work is not just about creating a new object or a new product or a new service. It's thinking about this object in the context of people's life, with consequences, with problems, with limits, with opportunities, with drawbacks. And the more the designers anticipate those two things, the better it would be, because they would realign or readjust their project.
Alors Refugize, c'est un projet que j'ai développé en interne. C'est un projet très simple, c'est une application qui fonctionne sur smartphone et qui permet de simplifier la communication entre les personnes réfugiées et les citoyens et les organismes, les associations, etc. par des pictogrammes. L'interface est très simple, c'est une interface dans laquelle il y a un ensemble de pictogrammes, de symboles. Je peux faire des recherches en plein de langues différentes, en farsi, en anglais, en cyrillique, en russe, peu importe. Et à partir de là, j'ai les pictogrammes que j'ai choisis, je peux les glisser sur mon téléphone et ils s'affichent en grand. Je peux en mettre 1, 2, 3, je peux les entourer, les barrer, écrire par-dessus. Et je peux expliquer comme ça, sans mots, des concepts qui sont parfois un peu difficiles, délicats, sur la censure, sur la fuite d'un pays, la fuite de son pays, sur la sexualité, la torture, etc. Donc pas mal de concepts qui peuvent être parfois difficiles et un peu complexes. Je l'ai autofinancé, je l'ai conçu à partir d'Insight, en faisant des tests utilisateurs, etc. Donc il y a vraiment une démarche. Et après, j'ai tout mis en open source, j'ai libéré le projet le plus largement possible. Et c'est un projet aujourd'hui qui est utilisé par des personnes réfugiées, je crois sur SOS Méditerranée, ils m'avaient dit qu'ils l'utilisaient. Bibliothèque Sans Frontières aussi l'a installé dans leurs outils. Donc voilà, je fais quelque chose comme ça, je le diffuse. Ça prend pas, je teste. Et puis si ça prend, tant mieux. Ça prend pas, il y a 1001 projets à faire encore. Donc ça, c'est le genre de choses que je cherche vraiment à développer de plus en plus, quoi.
I think I've been a bit of a maverick, if I'm honest, my whole career. I've always, whether it's in architecture, not enjoying or believing in the economic model to which we build, whether it was commercial projects I was given in industrial design and working around those briefs. I think I've always been motivated by the lack of something in the world that I felt that there should, that is needed. And I think that privacy and security are issues that have and always will be really important, but that we are at a time where we have more and more devices and products and services connected to the internet, more organisations connected to the web as well, and that there is more personal data being produced and collected. And right now we're in a position where, as users, we have little to no control of any of that. There is an opportunity, I think, for design to come in and to rebalance some of that, to start thinking about how we can design services that empower people. So I started IF really out of a frustration that privacy and security were not being looked at in any meaningful way in organisations a few years ago. Now, I think the landscape has changed quite considerably. I think the political landscape has pushed some of that. But more and more, when I talk to people about what I do, rather than them going, why would you do that? Why is that interesting? They're like, well, that's so important. I'm so glad to find someone who's actually looking at this. So,
privacy is a cornerstone of freedom. Without question, the digital era in communications technologies will heighten concern about the sensitivity of personal information that can be collected or disclosed about individual citizens, and the ever-increasing pervasiveness of such data collection.
Dans toute profession, il y a des dérives possibles. On parle d'acharnement thérapeutique, par exemple, dans le domaine de la santé. C'est une dérive de l'acte professionnel. Est-ce qu'il y a des dérives analogues en design? Bien sûr, il y a des dérives analogues. Les designers ne sont pas plus parfaits que les autres. Donc, ils sont soumis aux mêmes tentations. La tentation principale, c'est la tentation de l'arrogance de l'artiste. C'est la tentation de la signature. C'est la tentation de la page couverture du magazine en papier glacé. C'est la tentation de la célébrité, et voilà.
This notion that great designers can be celebrities because they're putting more shit into the world. Yeah, design is for me a very problematic industry. And what other industry makes celebrities of people that are designing things that only a few can afford?
Designer as an author whose perspective is like just great and should just do their work out of their genius creativity. There's this all sorts of myth about designers' creativity that leave like the designers interested in people, interested in field research, kind of partly out of the picture. It's not necessarily true for all the designers, but I think there's a tendency for a lot of like commercial designers to, well, not being interested in actual people, but more about their perspective and the myth about people.
Sur les dangers par rapport au design, je pense que c'est l'empowerment du design, c'est-à-dire le design, enfin les dangers qui viendraient nuire au design, c'est le design à la solde du marketing, le design à la solde de, un petit peu comme on parle de greenwashing, je me méfie du design qui serait employé comme un human washing, où tout à coup toutes les entreprises, même les pires, deviennent éthiques, sociales, engagées, solidaires, que sais-je encore, et que le design vienne cautionner ce genre de dévoiement en quelque sorte. Donc ça, je pense, c'est le design comme une arme en quelque sorte de manipulation.
Gosh, I think design has got a lot of challenges because for many organisations they don't even realise that design should be at the table for these meetings, right? So not only are you talking about ethics, you're also talking about like design should be here. Like we have a legitimate reason to be in this conversation as part of this decision. So we are in many places still not being considered as important in these companies. Having said that, when you bring ethics into the conversation, I think the challenges that designers face is that technology has been moving incredibly quickly. If you've not been keeping up yet, like you need to start looking at that right now because you've got a lot to learn. And I think that's not meant to sound scary or like threatening. It's if this means something to you, you need to dedicate some time to it and you need to get talking to people who understand back-end systems, how that works. Get talking to economists about the information economy. Form some opinions, form some useful opinions anyway, about that stuff. So I think that there are challenges in that this world has been moving and changing very quickly. And if you're not keeping up, that's quite a gap to jump.
It's the only way we can practice responsible design, I think, is through understanding the complexity of the world in which we're operating. The problem with design at the moment, it reduces that complexity, it simplifies it and makes it banal because it has this very, very simple goal of making good products. Define good is the problem. Design better is the problem. And I think this is the problem with design. It's got a very naive view of what is good and what is preferable.
Ethics and morality. We use these two words often, but do we really know what they mean? Morality focuses on absolute right and wrong. It defines what is forbidden, encouraged, or permitted. Of course, it always depends on the era and social context. For example, Christian morality was not the same in the 11th century or the 20th century, and varied between European countries. Ethics is the fundamental thought behind what it means to act well, for you and for others. This means that ethics does not say what is right or wrong, rather it shows you the road you should take to live better. There are three main theories to explain an ethical act. Virtue ethics says that if a man has virtuous characteristics, such as honesty, wisdom, or courage, he will have good intentions, and so will act in an ethical way. Deontology focuses on the conduct that should be followed for an action to be ethical, independent of its consequences. For example, medical deontology obliges doctors to treat all sick patients, whoever they may be. Consequentialism determines whether an act is ethical by evaluating its consequences. It judges actions based on their observable results, rather than on the intention of the actor, which would be far more difficult to know or to prove. It is sometimes difficult to distinguish ethics from morality, as the two are intrinsically linked. We can say that ethics tends to be universal, but it is constantly reinterpreting what is the best way to live for you and others. Morality defines a group of rules and norms, which are only relevant to an individual or social group at a given moment.
I think first and foremost, I think of ethics as a process. I think it's a process by which we sort of come to understand the way the world ought to be. So I think if science tells us this is the way things are in the world, I think ethics tells us this is the way things ought to be. And so I think it has a lot of resonances with design, but design I think tells us what we can do and even what we want to do, but it doesn't tell us what we must do. And I think that's the unique purview of ethics.
Sur la question du bon, on sait ce que c'est qu'un bon programme informatique, parce qu'on sait un bon programme informatique, c'est un programme qui exécute correctement son code, c'est un programme qui ne bug pas, qui n'a pas de problème à fonctionner. Par contre, si on devait définir un bon programme d'un point de vue moral, qu'est-ce que ce serait? Quels seraient les critères qu'on lui donnerait? Et comment on évaluerait ces critères, de fait? Est-ce qu'un bon programme informatique, est-ce qu'un bon logiciel, est-ce qu'une bonne application numérique, ça va être une application qui va développer le bien-être d'un maximum d'êtres humains? Et dans quel cas, quels seraient les critères de ce bien-être? Quels seraient les critères d'un point de vue technique pour justement favoriser le bien-être, l'ouverture d'esprit, la créativité, l'autonomie de l'utilisateur?
So my first question was, can ethics be computable? And at some point it was more, so I did a project about autonomous vehicles where I was trying to find, I was confronting different vehicles to the trolley dilemma, some kind of trolley dilemma, so which, if the car is confronted to a car crash, there is not really a proper solution to it. Let's say if you have to choose between 3 people or 2 people, so which ethics you have to apply to them. And here it was more, I found it was more a design question, because you have to ask what kind of ethics you are going to implement in this car, who is going to decide for which ethics should be inside this car, knowing that this car will work for a lot of different people with different culture and so on. And after even the problem was more complicated. Let's say if this car is manufactured, let's say BMW as the car with an ethic that works well in Germany, but BMW export a lot of their car, let's say in China. So all the ethics will adapt to a context like China. So this was for autonomous vehicles, but if we look at product as a whole, it was more like how something as subjective as ethics can be implemented into a generally manufactured good, and how it can adapt to different contexts.
Finalement, je pense que dans toutes ces tendances liées au design, il y a un truc qui est très très fort, c'est que c'est le besoin des entreprises qui conduit ces tendances-là. Et le rôle du designer, il est de suivre ou d'influencer ça, en tout cas pas de le subir. Donc à chaque fois qu'on nous emmenait vers un endroit particulier, nous on a toujours essayé, pas d'en sortir en étant en rupture, mais de dire ok, vous pensez que la nécessité c'est ça, mais est-ce que si on vous influence un petit peu par là, est-ce que vous êtes prêt à y aller ou pas? Et ce que je trouve assez formidable, c'est que depuis 3-4 ans, le métier il a complètement changé. C'est-à-dire que nous, les équipes qu'on a ont totalement changé parce que si on veut faire du bon design dans une organisation, quelle qu'elle soit, qu'elle soit publique, privée, de grande taille ou de petite taille, à notre avis, il faut avoir cette capacité de traiter les services, de traiter l'UX, de traiter l'architecture, de traiter la formation, de traiter la partie culturelle des entreprises, la partie économique de la culture, enfin, d'être beaucoup plus global. Et c'est une chance énorme parce qu'on se retrouve à des niveaux de responsabilité sur les projets qui sont exactement ce qu'on cherchait.
If you look at historically the role of design is a service-based discipline. And that's why designers do where the money is coming from. If someone hires them to do whatever, they do it. And very often, design, it's to stimulate business. It's to stimulate economy. And a lot of the ideas, designers kind of can, again, potentially have, they can bring social change, but in practice, they just, they hire to sell more of stuff. It's to increase consumerism. Most of designers who work on new products, they not bring in something new, but they try to increase sales of something new. They bring in, psychological obsolescence of objects is built into objects. The reason why we need new cars, new shoes, new clothes is, to make you feel like the old one is inadequate, which is often not the case. You don't really need to replace everything all the time.
The idea that technology improves our lives, I've mentioned this point a little while ago, but design is really at the heart of that. So if I work for a company and I'm developing a new product, that product will be better than the previous version. And the lifestyle that I will have as a result of owning this product will be a more pleasurable lifestyle than the one that I would have if I didn't own this product. So it becomes impossible for anybody developing a new product to say, this product is going to be great, but it could go wrong in these ways.
When I was working at Google in the US, I had this realization that there was more technology in my life than ever before. But for some reason, it felt harder to do all the things I wanted to do with myself. And I felt like there was something fundamentally off in that situation. Because if technology is for anything, it seems like it's for helping us live better, do the things we want to do better, achieve our goals, live by our values.
Je pense à Bruno Latour qui lui décrivait plusieurs façons dont les objets techniques prescrivent nos comportements. Donc il y a les objets qui vont forcer à agir, comme les tourniquets de métro. Il y a les objets qui vont nous persuader d'agir, comme les radars sur la route. Il y a les objets qui vont nous séduire, donc qui vont influencer notre comportement, mais sans que ce soit rationnel. Comme par exemple, on y prend beaucoup d'exemples sur la route. Donc, par exemple, une route toute droite pendant des kilomètres et des kilomètres va nous inciter à rouler plus vite. C'est une influence sur le comportement qui n'est pas rationnelle.
As you can see now, I have no hands on the wheel. So it does not require a constant nag or anything like that.
If you go into a secondary school right now, everyone out of lessons is like this, and scrolling. And the endorphins that people experience from the rush of likes they get for a selfie. I mean, I'm being really critical and also I'm broad brush about it. But someone's designed that, and someone's designed the experience that they're going through, and someone's designed the likes, and they have been in board meetings and presentations and user research sessions, understanding the effect that has on people. But yet that's the kind of design work we're pushing out right now. And in the political situation we find ourselves in right now, I think it would be wrong for designers to continue designing experiences for digital solipsism, this idea that we are alone in the world with our piece of technology and we have no impact.
So for instance, in infinite news feeds, like on Twitter or Facebook, what essentially the psychological mechanism there is the same that is used with slot machines. It's a kind of randomizing of the reward. Because, if you think about an infinite feed, it's just a constant, never-ending stream of rewards to be had, informational rewards. And, when you scroll down, you pull down to refresh, you're sort of pulling the lever on a slot machine. So basically, by sort of privileging our impulses over our intentions, things like, infinite feeds contribute to, they select for a certain set of impulsive reactions. And I think in politics, outrage is a huge one. But of course, there are others that are potentially positive, like I think the feeling of awe, or cuteness, cute kitty photos. But I think it's not the question of will we be outraged or will we be having experiences of awe. It's more about will those be moving us toward what we want to be moved toward? Will they be, as Aldous Huxley put it, helping us be irrational in a reasonable way? Is the system fundamentally on our side, I think is the question, ultimately.
Actually, now I'm working on projects that are totally against my own ethical or what I studied before. One of the recent projects I had to work on was a robot delivering pizza in Pizza Hut Plus in Shanghai. And of course, you develop this robot or you participate in its development, it will affect a lot of people. A lot of people in China cannot afford to have good studies, and they rely on to feed the family on this kind of small jobs, such as waiter. And you know that this robot, when it goes to the market, it will make people lose a lot of jobs. But then if I don't do it, I don't get a salary. And that's why it's an important thing about ethics. A lot of designers speak about ethics. And sure, maybe they have some kind of ethical belief and so on, but how far are you going to sacrifice yourself to really apply your own ethical belief? And that's, I think, a big issue in the design field.
Perhaps the canonical example here is the bench that is supposed to prevent people living on the street to sleep on. I have this, when I did this project about designers and ethnography, I interviewed a designer working for the public transport company in Paris and told me, yeah, I had to design that bench. I was asked to design a bench on which people could not sleep so that there wouldn't be like bumps on the benches. Like, okay, well, that's kind of tricky in terms of your ethic. What do you think about that? I said, yeah, well, I had two options. Either I did it or I was just fired. So that's the kind of like boundary or extreme limit in which like where the designers sit. Can they exert their strategic perspective, or are they just not allowed to do much more than saying, yeah, okay, I'm gonna do this bench?
It's hard, the choice. Again, it's easier for me now because, of course, at the beginning it's more difficult because you're more dependent. We have enough work now, so I can be more selective. At the beginning, I was lucky that, we had work coming from cultural sector where there's less difficult choices. And now, over time, I can make these choices now after 15 or 17 years of working because you build a position to be in this place. I think every choice you make kind of comes back to you sooner or later. If you engage with some kind of strange products, it will come back to you as well. You get more of, the simple principle is that whatever you do, you get more of it. So if you start doing something you don't agree with it, you probably get more of the same questions to do it again and again, and people can become experts in doing this kind of things.
Après, il y a aussi un travail de prise de recul et de critique et de savoir dire non ou savoir reformuler des commandes qui sont qui sont jugées non éthiques ou contradictoires ou pas au service du citoyen. Et là, j'ai envie de dire, c'est à chaque designer de savoir où est-ce qu'il se situe entre sa survie économique et puis son envie, son militantisme professionnel, qui est de tirer un projet plutôt du côté de l'usager ou plutôt du côté du commanditaire, quoi.
Design so often happens in this vacuum where we spend all of our time thinking about form, materiality, of function, of how we interact with the thing, but always in this, almost in a bubble. We think about very rarely what's outside of that bubble, about the real lives, about the real systems in which people live. And as a consequence, this is where problems lie. Because we have to think about the world in which our products exist, in as much complexity as we can possibly cope with, because they're incredibly complicated. And I came across this very recently, this exact problem, when I was in a conversation with probably one of the most talented designers I know, product designers. He's been practicing for a small company in London since we graduated from the RCA. We were in the same year. He's just taken a job at Amazon as a kind of quite high-up product designer. And I was just talking to him about this idea of ethics and responsibility because I'm slightly concerned about some of the things that Amazon are currently doing.
Alexa, would you lie to me?
I always try to tell the truth. I'm not always right, but I would never intentionally lie to you or anyone else.
And for him, he was shocked that I could be questioning the value of what he's doing. He thinks he's contributing amazing things to the world, but he's thinking on this scale. He's thinking about the beautiful products that he makes, and this is the danger within design.
If you rethink things from the bottom, then you can completely do something different. And the magazine is at the financing, the distribution, the production, everything is kind of thought like, okay, if we're doing a new magazine, we don't have to inherit any existing old platforms or plans. We can just do it from scratch.
I find it's very important to make designers understand the value of the humanities and social sciences by showing, for instance, that if you look at history of technology, for instance, of certain product, it can show you that things have been different in the past. So by using this understanding of what has been different in the past is a way to make designers aware that things should be different in the future and that you can maybe adopt more ethical choices. So that's for history. Anthropology, it shows that in different cultures, in different places, in different territories in the world, there are different ways to live. And by showing that, that's also a way to question a design brief, question product, question existing services. So I take this kind of example of history, how things have been different in the past, anthropology, how things are different elsewhere, as a way as a sort of metaphor to think about design education should open mindset and not necessarily make designers answer to the client's question in a way that it would be a sort of status quo. We need to have an open mind if you want to live in more habitable near future world.
We do need, I believe, more organisations to start talking about and opening up some of the patterns that they're exploring and creating, because we've got a window of opportunity right now to come up with some ethical patterns, whether that be about privacy or security or transparency, for people, generations to come, to copy. If you think about a payment window for a credit card on an online service, you never see a really different version of that. And if I asked you right now to design me a credit card service, you'd picture one you used last week and kind of copy that. Designers are really good at copying each other, But when it comes to ethics, I don't think we've got any blueprints to copy. So I think we have a window of opportunity, a very exciting opportunity to make some of those patterns and guidelines for people to follow. So I think that's a really big challenge, because without those patterns, it's more expensive, it's more time-consuming to bring ethics into your work. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It's just that the barriers are there and there's more obstacles to get past.
Et je trouve que plus l'univers est difficile, plus l'univers paraît réticent à une approche critique du design, et plus c'est intéressant, parce que si tu arrives, c'est ce qu'on raconte souvent, hein, mais si tu arrives avec une grosse entreprise qui te paraît quand même très complexe à manœuvrer, à lui faire 1% ou 2% d'influence sur une première année, dans 5 ans, tu es là, quoi. C'est beaucoup. C'est énorme, et tu as l'impression qu'avec une petite influence, tu peux faire beaucoup sur un gros paquebot. Donc moi, je trouve que c'est intéressant.
So what happens if design starts to happen locally, the way we're talking about consuming energy locally? So this is the principle in the gravity battery, the energy being something local, being through the wall, so you can see the energy that you're consuming, but also the design of products being done locally, so local manufacturer, local skills, using local craftspeople perhaps. It is very much the whole idea of open source hardware, of sharing knowledge. A lot of the maker labs are talking, and maker spaces are talking about this stuff.
You know, I think there are a number of things designers can do. I think that one of the first things, though, is kind of just awareness of that there is a problem. You know, there's a lot of optimism in the tech industry. A lot of it is well justified, but a lot of it is, I think, not as sensitive to the what in economic terms you could call externalities of the design. So things like distraction would be one of these things, whether that's a minor annoyance or a habit that you develop over time that keeps you from being able to reach your goals. And so the reason that designers don't really see these is a lot of times we don't measure them. It's kind of like pollution was in the environmental movement. You know, we knew that stuff was getting dumped into rivers. We knew that there was some kind of harm to the environment, but it wasn't until we started measuring it and quantifying it that then we could actually talk about it and hold the people doing the polluting to account. And I think it's a similar situation here where we kind of have a vague notion that there's something wrong in a deep way with like distraction and the way in which we get habituated into being how we don't want to be. But I think we're still at the very beginning of really figuring out how to talk about that and measure it. But I think once we do, I think the goal ought to be doing for our mental environment what we did for the physical environment with the environmental movement. And so I think that involves then new responsibilities on the part of companies and designers to not just measure the value that they're getting, but the value that they're giving to people, but then also the potential harms or negative effects that the design is causing.
At first sight, there doesn't seem to be much relationship between farming and industry, but industry produces pollution, and pollution affects crops. So a change in industry affects farming via pollution. The man-made world consists of a whole complex of subtle relationships like that. Change one thing, and it sets up a slow and complicated chain reaction.
Yeah, understanding is really is in a way the key. Yeah. Like if you understand things, you respect things, and if you respect things, then then you take care about things, and then everything is not fine, but better.
L'éthique des vertus, c'est quelles sont les qualités qu'une bonne designer devrait intégrer, devrait maîtriser ou devrait pratiquer pour faire un bon travail. À part, évidemment, la vertu de compétences professionnelles, de maîtrise des outils de la profession, qui sont importantes, mais qui ne sont pas suffisantes.
I have difficulty framing recommendations for others. Again, it's the same with any piece of advice. And I think the best piece of advice is to be skeptical of other people's advice, because I think people too much. There's too much information available everywhere, and everyone's providing clear-cut answers. How to do things. There are books, how to do that, how to do this. You can see 10 tips how to improve your whatever from your sex life to your design skills to your whatever. I think people should stop kind of paying attention to these things and kind of stop paying attention to themselves. So I think developing a skeptical attitude towards other people's advice because it's not relevant is a key.
La vertu primordiale qui reste depuis toujours et qui a traversé finalement ces différentes étapes de Sysmo, c'est le dialogue. Le dialogue, je veux dire. Et encore plus, je veux dire, demain, là, tous ces outils dans tous les sens, etc., qui continuent de nous isoler, le rôle du designer, c'est de créer du dialogue. Je veux dire, il n'y a que ça qui fonctionne. Plus on est nombreux, plus on a besoin de se parler, plus on a besoin de s'entendre, d'apprendre à se disputer. Enfin, moi, je pense que le rôle d'un projet, parfois, il est simplement de créer du dialogue. Il n'est pas le résultat. Il est quel dialogue je suis arrivé à créer autour de ce projet. Et je pense que la valeur du dialogue, elle est en train de remonter par rapport à la valeur de la production. On est passé d'un univers très... la valeur du design, c'est le nombre de pièces que tu vas vendre à la fin. Moi, demain, je pense que la valeur du design, ça sera quelle est l'importance du dialogue que tu as réussi à créer entre combien d'acteurs, avec quelles différences sociales et culturelles, sur quelle largesse ou largeur de territoire.
Moi, je dirais la curiosité en premier point, c'est-à-dire se rappeler qu'on est vraiment dans une discipline expérimentale, quoi, et qui peut-être n'existera plus dans quelques décennies, et que donc il faut s'éclater, quoi. Il faut tester des choses, il faut avoir l'audace de mixer des méthodes, de tester des approches, voilà. Donc ça, c'est, je pense, la curiosité professionnelle et la capacité à travailler avec des acteurs non designers, c'est vraiment une vertu importante.
I think honesty. Now I feel I'm not, for example, I'm working on projects that are against my own ethics, so I don't want to go to designer conference to speak about my research. Because I don't feel it was right to speak about it at the time I was doing it, but now I don't feel it's right to speak about it when I'm actually doing exactly the opposite of what I believe.
We, on the blog, we've got it's almost a manifesto, but Philippe Starck features in one of our challenges, is to get rid of vacuous design bullshit. So Philippe Starck talks about the Juicy Salif lemon squeezer as this Juicy Salif lemon squeezer is not to squeeze lemons, is to start conversations. Is the line. You know, it's a lemon squeezer. I don't know what kind of conversations he's expecting or hoping to start with that particular object.
So I don't know if this is the most important virtue, but it's one that's really important to me right now, is that I think designers who are interested in ethics and who are wanting to better their practice, the virtue you should have or you can learn is to be open. I think we have so much to thank for open source communities that have built so many of the infrastructures we rely on. But also, really, that right now, to bring ethics into digital products, which is my world of ethics, is really digital, there is so much work to be done. That if we do brilliant work and make it closed, it will have a limited effect on any other design we're seeing around us.
I mean, I suppose one of the most important virtues for a designer to cultivate would be care for the user, because you can be the best designer in the world technically, but if you don't care about the person you're designing it for and their life and their success, your really effective design might be effective in the wrong direction. It could make their lives worse. I think of ethics as, a lot of people think of ethics as a brake pedal on innovation. They say it's just another box to tick on a document, it's another committee. But I think of it less as a brake pedal and more as a steering wheel. And if not an accelerator even sometimes.
It's like a tree. I just try to grow, and as I grow, as more space I take, but not for nothing. I take more space also to cover other things, or pretty much like in nature in the end.